Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight I'm here with some stories from Reddit that'll help you unwind and drift off to sleep. Whether you're dealing with insomnia, need some background noise while you game, or just enjoy getting lost in other people's drama before bed, you're in the right place. I've got a collection of stories tonight that range from family conflicts to workplace drama and everything in between. Some of these might make you think twice about your own relationships, while others will probably have you shaking your head at how people can act. But before we dive in, just wanted to say thanks to everyone who's been commenting and engaging with these videos. It really means a lot. So grab your favourite blanket, dim those lights, and let's dive into some stories that will make you grateful for your own relatively peaceful life. Fair warning though, some of these might stick with you longer than you'd expect. These aren't your typical feel-good bedtime stories. They're the kind of raw, unfiltered human experiences that remind us just how complicated life can really get. Our first story comes from someone dealing with a family conflict that involves some expensive consequences. My family's all on my cousin's side for this issue, and I wanted some outside judgment. My cousin has always been the golden child of our generation. He's funny, good-looking, and outgoing, not to mention a boy amongst girls. He's always loved to mess around and play pranks. For the record, I really dislike this cousin. I think he's irresponsible, childish, and annoying. I have had hearing problems for years. I recently got a $6,000 pair of hearing aids. Recently at my grandmother's birthday party, we were all eating and drinking. On the back porch, my grandmother has a pool. My cousin decided he was going to throw me in the pool because it would be funny to ruin my hair that I just got done that day. I repeatedly told him to stop and put me down, in a very serious and not playful at all tone. He threw me in the pool, and my hearing aids were ruined. Afterwards, when I told him what happened, he basically said, "Whoops, didn't know you had hearing aids now." When I told him the cost of them and that he would have to replace them, he freaked out and said, "No way." My family didn't want me to make him pay for them because I significantly out-earn him, and also everyone else in the family. He was in college at the time, barely making ends meet in a call centre job. His girlfriend and him have a baby, and they live in a one-bedroom apartment. He refused to pay, so I took him to court. I won. He refused to make the payments after, so I took him back to court, and his wages are now being garnished for the maximum amount, which is 20% of his total wages. It pushed him over the edge of what he could afford, so he's had to work extra and drop out of college to be able to pay their rent. My family's absolutely fuming at me. I think he made one bad choice after the other, and he has never given a sincere apology during this whole ordeal. Had he gave a real apology after the incident and asked if he could wait till he finished school to pay me back, I would have been fine with it. But the entitled little prick is digging his feet in at every move. The only reason I could see me maybe being the arsehole is because it's affecting his child and girlfriend. That story hits different when you think about how a split-second decision to throw someone in a pool can completely derail multiple lives. $6,000 is no joke, and the fact that he never apologized makes it so much worse. Moving on to our next story, which deals with some serious family dynamics and grief. I live with my dad and my stepmom. My mum passed away when I was 10, and it's still a sensitive subject for me. My stepmom came into the picture a couple of years later, and while we're civil, we're definitely not close. She's always had this weird vibe, like she's trying to compete with my mum even though my mum isn't here. She gets snippy when I talk about her or wear anything that belonged to her, like my mum's old necklace I wear basically every day. Anyway, a few nights ago, we were out for dinner with my dad, stepmom, and her parents. Her mum asked about the necklace, and I said, "It was my mum's. She gave it to me before she passed. I wear it every day." Stepmom immediately cut in with, "Well, technically, I'm your mum now. I've done more mothering in the last 8 years than she did in 10. I swear the whole table went silent. I just laughed and said, "If you think being a mum is about trying to erase the actual one, then yeah, you've been amazing." She looked like she'd been slapped. Her mum gasped. My dad told me to apologise, but I refused. I said I was tired of her acting like my mum never existed, and I wasn't going to play along anymore. Now my stepmom is barely speaking to me, and my dad says I need to be the bigger person because she's just trying to connect. But to me, that didn't feel like connection. That felt like erasure. Man, that response was absolutely perfect. There's something so deeply wrong about trying to compete with a deceased parent, especially when dealing with a child who's still grieving. The stepmom really walked into that one. Our third story tonight comes from someone dealing with a birth experience that went completely against her wishes. Hi everyone. Our daughter is now 8 weeks old, so obviously this whole argument has gone on a very, very long time. We both have been holding grudges and neither of us think that we are wrong. My husband does not know I am posting this, so I am going to keep it as anonymous as possible. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, my husband started in immediately telling me that I should have a home birth. I really do not know why he was so adamant on it, but he was. At first I brushed him off and told him I would think about it because I was only 6 weeks pregnant and the birth seemed so far off. Of course it came quickly, and my husband would literally speak over me at doctor's appointments when my doctor would ask if I had a birth plan. This caused a few arguments between us in those 39 weeks of pregnancy, but I never really changed my mind. Eventually my husband's mother sat down and talked to me, and she told me all of the reasons why they did not want me to go to a hospital for the birth. I expressed my concerns about, safety of the baby and myself. But just like my husband, she brushed me off. I ended up telling my husband that I would take myself to the hospital when it was time, and that I did not want a home birth. He acted as if he didn't hear me. We met with a doula who was also very pushy. I felt overwhelmed and not supported at all. I was 36 weeks at that point. So when I went into labour, I was 39 weeks, and I absolutely begged my husband to take me to the hospital where my doctor is. He wouldn't. He spoke to me condescendingly and called the doula instead. I was in labour for about 3 days, active labour for around the last 22 hours. I cried the whole time. I just felt something was wrong. I was scared, and oftentimes they left me alone. The doula told me that if active pushing and labour reached 24 hours, I had to go into the hospital. I remember thinking that I could not decide which was worse, staying in labour for another 2 hours or having my baby right there. When she was finally out, I don't even remember wanting to hold her. I just remember crying out of relief. Obviously, I am okay now, but I did not have a good experience. On my first appointment after birth with my doctor, she was very shocked I had the baby. She was concerned. I was so upset. I told my husband that he absolutely ruined it for me. I truly never want to go through that again. I hear mothers say that they forget all the pain the second they have the baby, but I didn't. I love my daughter so much, but it was horrible, and it was entirely his fault. So I told him that several times. He rolls his eyes every time and tells me how mothers are strong and how I am not trying to be strong. I told him that if we ever have another baby, which he wants, that I will never do a home birth ever again. His response is, "We'll see. I cannot possibly be the arsehole here, can I? Everyone around me is acting like this is so normal, but it's not. Is it?" That story genuinely made me angry. The complete dismissal of her bodily autonomy and medical preferences during one of the most vulnerable times in her life is absolutely inexcusable. The fact that he's still dismissing her feelings about it afterwards makes it even worse. Let's move to our next story, which involves a confrontation that got physical pretty quickly. I dread going to my childhood friend's birthday party every year. We moved apart a decade ago, and even though I'll always care deeply about her, we are very different people now, and her friend group reflects this. She has one friend, let's call her Amanda, who without fail has to comment on my weight every single time she sees me. "You're so skinny. Do you even eat? Does your boyfriend care that you don't have curves? Your legs are like sticks. For the record, I eat plenty. I just have a fast metabolism which keeps me super thin. I keep a strong face when Amanda says these things to me, but truthfully, she's touching on my worst insecurities, and it makes me dread going to these parties every year. I was considering not going this year until I talked to my mum about it. My mum had what I thought was a great idea on how to deal with Amanda. She suggested I pretend she's giving me a compliment. My mum told me, if Amanda says, "You're so skinny," just smile and say, "Thanks, I love being skinny." And if she looks disappointed at your response, you'll have proven she was trying to insult you. I thought this was great advice. However, something I had failed to mention to my mum was that Amanda was overweight. I didn't realise this meant I was entering potential asshole territory. Anyway, the dreaded birthday party day comes. And of course, no surprise, Amanda immediately looks at my arms and comments how tiny they are. I ignored this comment. Then later on in the day, we were standing in a group together and she was eyeing me up and down. She chuckled to herself and says, "God, you're so skinny." And I thought, okay, here it is. Here is my moment. I turned to her, smiled and said, "Thanks. I love being skinny." And then, and I am completely serious here, she slaps me in the face. I was in complete shock, just staring back at her, mouth hanging open, with my hand on my cheek. Everyone was silent. She suddenly bursts into tears and runs out of the room. 2 of her friends chase her. Only one other girl, and my childhood friend, asked if I was okay, but everyone else was just shooting me dirty looks. I promptly left the party, which sucked because I had a 2-hour commute and had planned to sleep over. The next day, I was texting with my childhood friend about it. She basically thinks that even though Amanda shouldn't have slapped me, that I was insensitive for saying, "I love being skinny" to a plus-size person. I argued that Amanda has been consistently insensitive to me every party, and I didn't comment on her body, only my own. She told me that it's different because being skinny is socially acceptable, and that Amanda wouldn't usually do something like this, but I triggered her with my insult. My mum thinks I am in the right, but this was all her idea, so of course she does. That escalation was absolutely wild. Going from verbal comments straight to physical violence over someone saying they love their own body type is completely unhinged. The double standard is pretty obvious when you think about it too. That response was brutal, but honestly needed. Sometimes people need to hear exactly what they're doing wrong, even if it stings. The fact that he couldn't take the feedback and wanted a do-over just proved the interviewer's point even more. Our next story comes from someone dealing with a workplace situation that escalated way beyond what anyone expected. I work at a mid-sized tech company, and we have this one guy named Marcus who's been there for about 3 years. He's technically competent, but has this really annoying habit of mansplaining everything to everyone, especially the women on our team. We have several brilliant female engineers, and Marcus constantly talks down to them like they're interns. Last week we were in a team meeting discussing a critical bug that was affecting our production servers. One of our senior developers, Sarah, who's been coding for over a decade, was explaining the root cause and her proposed solution. Marcus kept interrupting her, saying things like, "Well, actually, what you need to understand is," and "let me break this down for you in simpler terms." Sarah kept her cool and continued explaining her analysis, but you could see she was getting frustrated. The rest of us were getting uncomfortable too, because Marcus was being so condescending. When Sarah finished, Marcus immediately jumped in and basically repeated everything she had just said, but framed it like it was his own brilliant insight. Our team lead, who's usually pretty laid back, finally spoke up and said, "Marcus, Sarah literally just explained all of that. Do you have anything new to add?" Marcus got defensive and said he was just trying to make sure everyone understood the technical details. After the meeting, I was walking back to my desk with Sarah, and she looked exhausted. She told me she was thinking about requesting a transfer to another team because she was so tired of dealing with Marcus. That really bothered me, because Sarah is one of the best developers we have, and losing her because of one guy's ego would be a huge loss for the company. So I decided to do something about it. I started documenting every instance of Marcus's behaviour. I kept notes on meetings where he interrupted female colleagues. instances where he talked over them, times when he repeated their ideas as his own. I also started encouraging other team members to speak up when they witnessed this behaviour. The breaking point came 2 weeks later during another team meeting. We were discussing a new feature implementation, and our junior developer Lisa was presenting her design. Marcus interrupted her within the first minute and said, "Okay, let me explain how this actually works," and started drawing on the whiteboard. Lisa tried to continue her presentation, but Marcus kept talking over her. Finally, I stood up and said, "Marcus, you need to stop. Lisa is presenting her work, and you're being incredibly disrespectful." Marcus looked shocked and said he was just trying to help clarify things. I pulled out my phone and showed him the notes I'd been keeping. I read out loud several examples from the past month where he'd interrupted female colleagues or dismissed their contributions. The room went dead silent. Marcus got red in the face and accused me of targeting him unfairly. He said he treats everyone the same way and that I was making this about gender when it wasn't. I told him that his impact on the team was more important than his intentions, and that multiple people had complained about his behaviour. Our team lead ended the meeting early and scheduled individual conversations with everyone involved. By the end of the week, Marcus was put on a performance improvement plan that included mandatory training on workplace communication and respect. The interesting part is that Marcus seemed genuinely surprised by all of this. He kept insisting that he was just trying to be helpful and share his knowledge, but when several team members confirmed that his behaviour was a problem, he finally started to understand that good intentions don't excuse poor execution. Marcus has been much better since then. He still occasionally slips into old habits, but he catches himself and apologises. The team dynamic has improved dramatically, and Sarah decided to stay on the team. Lisa told me later that she was grateful someone finally spoke up because she'd been feeling like her contributions weren't valued. Looking back, I'm glad I documented everything and confronted the behaviour directly. But I wonder if there was a better way to handle it that wouldn't have put Marcus on the spot so publicly. That story shows how important it is to document patterns of behaviour in the workplace. Sometimes people genuinely don't realise how they're coming across, but impact matters more than intention when it comes to team dynamics. Moving on to our next story, which deals with a family situation that got completely out of hand over something that should have been simple. My brother and his wife have been married for 5 years, and they've always been pretty controlling about family gatherings. They insist on hosting everything at their house. They dictate the menu. They set all the rules. Most of the family just goes along with it to keep the peace. But it's always bothered me. This year for Thanksgiving, they announced that they were implementing a device-free policy. No phones, tablets, laptops, nothing. Everyone had to put their devices in a basket by the front door when they arrived. They said it was about being present and connecting as a family. I have a diabetic daughter who's 12 years old. She uses a continuous glucose monitor that connects to an app on my phone, so I can track her blood sugar levels throughout the day. When her levels get too high or too low, I get alerts on my phone so I can help her manage it. When I explained this to my brother and his wife, they said I could check on my daughter's levels, but I'd have to do it in another room away from everyone else, and I couldn't have the phone at the dinner table. I told them that wasn't practical because I needed to be able to respond to alerts immediately, and that stepping away from the table every time I got a notification would be more disruptive than just having my phone. They insisted that their rule applied to everyone with no exceptions. They said if it was really that important, maybe we should skip Thanksgiving this year. I was furious, but I didn't want to cause drama, so I agreed to their terms. Thanksgiving Day arrives, and sure enough, about an hour into dinner, I get a high glucose alert. My daughter's blood sugar was climbing dangerously high, and I needed to help her calculate an insulin dose. I quietly took out my phone to check the app. My sister-in-law immediately called me out in front of everyone. She said I was being disrespectful and breaking the rules we'd agreed on. I tried to explain that this was a medical emergency, but she cut me off and said I could handle it in the other room. I stood up and said, "This is my daughter's health we're talking about. I'm not going to risk her safety because you want to play family police." My brother jumped in and said I was being dramatic and that diabetes wasn't that serious if it was managed properly. That's when I lost it. I told him he had no idea what he was talking about and that his need to control everything was putting my child at risk. I said if he couldn't understand that medical needs come before his arbitrary rules, then we'd find somewhere else to spend our holidays. My sister-in-law started crying and said I was ruining Thanksgiving for everyone. Other family members tried to mediate, but I was done. I helped my daughter with her insulin, packed up our stuff, and we left. Now half the family is saying I overreacted and should apologise. They think I could have handled it more diplomatically. The other half supports me and thinks my brother and his wife were completely unreasonable. My daughter felt terrible that her medical condition caused a family fight, which breaks my heart. I've been thinking about it for weeks now, and I still don't think I was wrong. Medical needs should always take priority over social rules, but I wonder if I could have found a way to handle it that didn't blow up the entire family gathering. That one really hits me in the heart. Using a child's medical condition as a power play in family dynamics is absolutely unacceptable. The fact that they called diabetes management dramatic shows a complete lack of understanding about what parents of diabetic children deal with every day. Our next story comes from someone who discovered their roommate had some very unusual habits that went way beyond normal cleanliness standards. I moved in with my roommate Jake about 6 months ago after responding to his Craigslist ad. He seemed normal enough during our initial meeting. Clean, responsible, had good references. The rent was reasonable and the apartment was in a great location, so I thought I'd lucked out. Jake works from home as a freelance graphic designer, so he's around the apartment a lot more than I am. At first, I appreciated how clean he kept the common areas. The kitchen was always spotless, the living room was perfectly organised, and he even cleaned the bathroom more often than necessary. But after a few weeks, I started noticing some odd patterns. Jake would reorganise things I'd left out, like my keys or my mail, and put them in what he considered more appropriate locations. When I'd ask about it, he'd say he was just trying to keep things tidy and that he thought I'd appreciate the help. Then I noticed he was cleaning my dishes before I had a chance to wash them myself. I'd leave a coffee mug in the sink planning to wash it later, and within an hour it would be clean, dried and put away. Same with plates, bowls, utensils, everything. At first I thought it was considerate, but it started feeling weird when I realised he was doing it immediately after I used anything. The behaviour escalated when I discovered Jake was going into my bedroom while I was at work. I came home one day and immediately noticed that things had been moved around. My bed was made differently than how I'd left it. My clothes were folded and arranged in a way I never do. And my desk was organised according to some system I didn't recognise. When I confronted Jake about it, he admitted he'd been cleaning my room as a surprise. He said he thought I'd appreciate coming home to a perfectly organised space. I told him I appreciated the thought, but that my bedroom was private and he needed to stay out of it. He seemed confused by my reaction and kept insisting he was just trying to be helpful. I thought that would be the end of it, but the behaviour continued in other ways. Jake started timing my daily routines and would have things ready for me based on his observations. He'd start coffee brewing at exactly the time I usually woke up. He'd have my work clothes laid out on the couch when I got out of the shower. He'd prep my lunch ingredients in the exact portions he'd observed me using. The final straw came when I discovered Jake had been keeping detailed notes about my habits and preferences. I found a notebook in the kitchen with entries like prefers coffee at 7:15 a.m, uses 2 sugars, no cream, and leaves for work at 8:30 a.m, returns between 6 and 6:30 p.m, and watches Netflix in living room Tuesday and Thursday evenings. There were pages and pages of observations about my daily routine, my food preferences, my work schedule, even notes about my mood patterns. It was like he was conducting some kind of scientific study on my life. When I showed him the notebook, Jake became defensive and said he was just trying to be a good roommate by paying attention to my needs. He couldn't understand why I was upset about him trying to make my life easier. I tried to explain that it felt invasive and controlling, but he kept insisting his intentions were good. I told Jake he needed to stop monitoring my behaviour and respect my privacy. I said if he wanted to be helpful, he could ask me directly what I needed instead of making assumptions based on his observations. He agreed, but I could tell he didn't really understand why I was bothered by his behaviour. The situation improved somewhat after our conversation, but I still catch Jake watching me sometimes, like he's taking mental notes. I've started being more careful about my privacy, and I'm looking for a new living situation. Living with someone who treats you like a research subject is exhausting, even when their intentions aren't malicious. That story is genuinely unsettling. The level of detailed observation and documentation crosses way over the line from helpful roommate into stalker territory. Good intentions don't excuse behaviour that makes someone feel like they're living under surveillance. Let's move to our final story tonight, which involves a workplace situation where someone's attempt to be clever backfired in the most spectacular way possible. I work in marketing for a large company, and we have this employee named Derek who thinks he's much smarter than everyone else. He's always trying to find shortcuts and loopholes, and he has this annoying habit of acting like he invented every idea that comes out of our team meetings. Last month, our department was tasked with organising a major client presentation that would determine whether we kept a $1 million account. The presentation needed to showcase our creative capabilities and demonstrate why our agency was worth the premium pricing the client was paying. Derek volunteered to handle the visual design elements of the presentation, which seemed like a good fit since he has a background in graphic design. He kept talking about how he had some innovative ideas that would blow the client away and secure the contract for sure. The rest of the team worked on content development, market research and strategy, while Derek focused on making the presentation look amazing. He was very secretive about his work and wouldn't let anyone see what he was creating. He said he wanted it to be a surprise and that we'd all be impressed when we saw the final product. 2 days before the presentation, Derek finally showed us what he'd been working on. The slides looked incredible, professional, and creative. The graphics were sophisticated, the layout was perfect, and everything looked like it had been created by a top-tier design agency. We were all genuinely impressed and relieved that Derek had delivered something so polished. The presentation day arrived and our team was feeling confident. The client seemed engaged as we went through the content, and Derek's visual design was getting positive reactions from everyone in the room. We thought we had the contract in the bag. Then something unexpected happened. One of the client's marketing directors, a woman named Patricia, raised her hand during Derek's portion of the presentation. She said the design work looked familiar and asked if we could explain our creative process. Derek launched into this elaborate explanation about his design philosophy and the innovative techniques he'd used to create such compelling visuals. He was clearly enjoying being the centre of attention and was really playing up his creative genius angle. Patricia listened politely, then pulled out her laptop and projected something onto the screen. It was a presentation from another agency, created 6 months earlier for a different client. The slides were identical to what Derek had shown, down to the last detail. He had literally stolen an entire presentation and tried to pass it off as his own original work. The room went completely silent. Derek's face went white as he realised he'd been caught red-handed. He started stammering about inspiration and industry standards, but it was obvious to everyone what had happened. Patricia explained that her previous company had created those slides and that she'd recognised them immediately because she'd personally worked on that project. She said she was shocked that a professional agency would try to present stolen work as original creative content. That story is absolutely devastating. Derek's attempt to take a shortcut not only destroyed his own career, but potentially cost his entire company a $1 million contract. Sometimes trying to be too clever is the stupidest thing you can do. And that's where we'll wrap up tonight's collection of stories. We've covered everything from family drama and workplace disasters to roommate situations that went way too far. Some of these stories probably hit close to home, while others hopefully made you grateful for the relatively normal people in your life. Thanks for listening tonight, and if any of these stories resonated with you, feel free to share your own experiences in the comments. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the next one.